go.
Okay. What is up, everyone? So excited that you're here with us today. I'm Zach Giltz, with me, co-host Lindsay Runyon. And here on the New Normal, we break down big church for our everyday lives.
Yeah, and the way that we break down big church is to tell you guys where we've seen God working in the scripture, sermon, and the service. And to give you guys tips and tricks throughout the week to continue to wrestle with and to have a conversation about spiritual disciplines and questions and Genesis 32 this week. So,
Yeah.
but
And
first.
speaking of wrestling,
Oh,
you made the transition yourself.
I tried.
So Preston, as we'll see later, or you probably saw at Big Church, talks quite a bit about wrestling, which makes me think of just sports in general. So Lindsay, today I want to know a two-parter, and it can be the same answer. What's your favorite sport to play? What's your favorite sport to watch?
To play soccer. To watch, can I have two answers?
Yes.
One's the classic, like soccer. So soccer's about to ramp up some. European soccer is already playing. But recently, I've been watching a lot of hockey. I hate hockey. But now, like, I've watched the Mighty Ducks and Miracle, and now I'm just like into hockey now. So I've been watching a lot of NHL recently. But yeah, what about you? What sports do you play or watch? No, we're skipping over mine. I'm just kidding.
Okay, that's fine.
There's so many questions.
We don't have enough time, actually, to address all that just happened. But mine to play is 100% Ultimate Frisbee.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Man, I love to watch football.
Okay.
Love the Texans.
American, okay.
Yeah, sorry. American football, as we are indeed in America.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Independence Day. But yeah, so playing Ultimate Frisbee, absolutely adore it. Very fun. But then to watch, definitely college football, but the Texans, man, they're my team.
Okay.
Love it when they play. It's great stuff. I know that's an unpopular opinion in this town. Not the Texans, but it's fine. Moving on. Scripture.
And on that note.
So we are continuing our In the Beginning series. So what better place to continue beginning than in Genesis? And so Genesis 32 verses 22 through 32 is the story of Jacob wrestling with God for a blessing. And what really stood out to me in this passage is I think just how much Jacob has to be humbled and be reconciled to God in order to receive this blessing, right? Like God is holding all the strength, all the authority, all the power, and yet Jacob just kind of humbly begins to cling to God and saying, look, I'm not leaving without your blessing. And it's, I don't know, I think it's this beautiful moment of, and you kind of helped me see this, of God not going anywhere. God isn't pushing Jacob away, but rather Jacob has to have what it takes to kind of keep the discipline, if you will, to keep hanging on to God, even when it's hard. And knowing that in the long run, that will be more advantageous. It'll be better for his soul and for who he is than to let go and kind of take the easy way out. And so I think this humility and reconciliation that he has with God in this moment is really, really beautiful amidst the struggle. So, but what about you?
Yeah, and I think for me too, it's easy to read this passage as Jacob like winning and really trying to take this to like, oh, if we just fight our way through it, like God will help and bless us. But actually to know that even amidst this passage, God is acting in a lot of ways. Kind of like you say, God is wrestling just as much with Jacob, who has an incredible story already of Jacob and Esau and this blessing and the Jacob's ladder and heaven and also just his marriages. I mean, everything. So he's coming in. He has all of his possessions go before him, which is like completely like a no-no. And he's just like chilling all by himself in the dark. And God's like, it's time. Is it God? I don't know. We never actually see who the man was. But in Jacob and all of his vulnerability comes, like you said, humbly before this man / God and wrestle. And I think it's just really cool to see that God in two instances in this passage says like, oh, daybreak's about to come. Not that he's going to like he's gonna glitter like a vampire from Twilight or anything like that. Like, oh, I can't see the sun, I'm gonna melt.
The
No,
shimmer.
right? Because like remember with Moses, like the face of God is so bright and brilliant and glorified and majestic in all sorts of ways that he doesn't want Jacob to die with that. So to know that even God comes humbly and to the extent and meets Jacob where he's at with wrestling as a human has such obviously deep theological instances with Jesus, or we see all this blessing, and I don't know, I could go on. I wrote a paper about this in seminary, clearly. But there's just so many deep theological richness in this with Judges and also Genesis and First Corinthians, and I just go explore it. It's a lot of fun. But Preston took it in a cool way, I think, just to contextualize it to contextualize it to today with just where we not just struggling and fighting and wrestling with God, but really asking for that blessing, not just to survive, but thrive. Even amidst 7 overtimes where we continually showing up to Jesus and with Jesus, to know that we can struggle to find a better story for and with Jesus. And some of the things that he kept talking about, I'm looking at my notes, he talked about the game of life and how it tears his entire family apart. And again, how Jacob relentlessly never lets go and continues that struggle, and where we kind of struggling with Jesus in our own lives. So I thought it was just a really cool sermon amidst all of the craziness of today, and where are we struggling, and not just seeing the other side, but really sticking with it and not letting go. But where did you see God in the overall service?
Yeah, I think I was reminded this morning in the traditional service of just how like rich liturgy is. These things that we do on a weekly basis or a regular basis within corporate worship. A few weeks ago now, we had the prayer service on a Wednesday night, and being able to bring the confession into that, which is something that we would normally do on a monthly basis with communion, we haven't done in a while because we can't do communion together safely. But being able to join together in the confession and just remember that we all have sinned and fallen short, and then bringing that into the Lord's Prayer, and to know that we are all kind of called to the same standard of how can we allow God to bring heaven to earth and be a part of that. And then down to the affirmation of faith, and just like all of these things that are kind of the cornerstones of a traditional service. And then also just watching Jung Jin tear up that organ.
I know, right? Yeah.
I love that we have the organ cam now. Because I heard Caitlin McCullum was sitting next to me, and she just goes, "Is she playing with her feet?" I was like, "Yeah, dude." Like she was, I mean, she's amazing every Sunday, but getting to see it,
for sure.
just emphasizes just how intricate a musician she is. So that's been really cool. And then Ecclesia, I love that we have taken from 606 that reflection song and kind of put it in right after the sermon, to give some time for all of the depth of it to kind of the service and the sermon, but to kind of take root. I almost think of it as like the sermon and the scripture and the prayer kind of plants these seeds, and the reflection song starts to like pour out water. Like it's the first little water. Or if you watched a coffee video, Wednesdays Without Will, a little first pour, get the little aromas out of your coffee.
Blooming, yes.
Yeah, a good plumage. But yeah, so the reflection song today, though, was Peace by Bethel. And I just want to read the chorus because, like you said, kind of bringing this context of today and how important it is for us to find peace in that. But Peace by Bethel. Peace holds me when I'm broken, sweet peace that passes understanding. When the whole wide world is crashing down, I fall to my knees and breathe in your peace. Peace holds me when I'm broken, sweet peace that passes understanding. And yeah, I mean, set up for a reflection song.
For sure.
Just a lot of times when I sing, I can kind of focus on my voice instead of the words. So being able to just like sit and let that wash over me. When the whole wide world is falling down, I fall to my knees and breathe in your peace was just a huge reminder. And I think liturgy goes into that, right? It's that how we learn to breathe as Christians spiritually are part of it. So I don't know. I felt like that was really, really powerful. The whole service overall was great, but certainly, and then having Lily sing that, I mean, again, as Jung Jin tears up the organ, Lily can tear up a mic. So it was really good. And then that...
Well, I was going to ask you, what is our spiritual discipline then if you're talking about all this.
So for me, I think sometimes we can forget that prayer is a spiritual discipline because it feels very rudimentary. But a lot of times we can leave it rudimentary, which doesn't quite give it the service that it is as a discipline. And so this week, as we have before, but this week especially, I want to challenge us, as well as anyone who has joined us for this, to dive into prayer, to dive into seeing where God is calling you to serve, where God is pointing out your brokenness and trying to reconcile that. And then we're going to talk tomorrow in youth about intercessory prayer. And so not just praying for myself to be transformed, but how can I be praying on behalf of others? And really just taking time with that. And one thing that Richard Foster points out in the Celebration of Discipline is this idea of imaginative prayer. And that's not necessarily imagining it into existence, but rather kind of setting the stage for where you're meeting God. So if you feel like you are wrestling with God, maybe setting up an arena in your mind. It's okay. Like if you read through the Psalms, it's okay to be frustrated and to work it out and to like slog through it with God. God can take it and God can work on you in the midst of it, just like he did with Jacob. Or did he, as you pointed out? It's not necessary. Anyways, too far. But moving further out though, but I mean, and maybe it's a time of peace where you just need to sit with God. So you're setting up a tea party. I don't know, whatever it looks like for you and whatever season you feel like you're in, and kind of inviting Jesus to be a part of, like, kind of set the stage for that. And what does it look like? So, and then with that, maybe even praying over our questions.
Ooh, wow, that's a good segue. I was just going to say, I usually imagine myself in a vineyard, like John 15, I am the vine, you are the branches, or near the Sea of Galilee, or what I imagine the Sea of Galilee to look like. So kind of in Jesus's time, where would I be, and where are we kind of sitting, and where am I posturing myself? And it really helps me, I don't know, become aware of just where my soul is. So like, are we on a bench? Like, are we sitting close to each other or farther away from each other? Like, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it transformed my prayer life for sure. But the questions, again, we challenge you to pray and think creatively. But the questions I want you to think creatively as well. The first one being, what does a better life look like for you? When we talk about not just wrestling or struggling, but what is kind of the life after COVID or after all these instances? What does that look like? And then the second question is that the same life Jesus wants for you? So a little bit of Jesus juking at the very last. Like, you may want this better life. What does Jesus want for you? Because I think sometimes it's hard to know our own desires and to see Jesus' desires and where they kind of both align together, knowing that they're not like separate and we have to deny ourselves of all things, but where are we just getting to the root to just who Jesus is in our lives, and to really see that in prayer, but also just pondering in our own kind of self-reflection. So, yeah,
for sure. And as always, the conversation doesn't stop here.
Never stops.
It just starts. It never stops, much less here. But yeah, we want this to be kind of a continuation of the conversation from Big Church, and then ideally a continuation of conversation in youth and college ministries, adult ministries, wherever you are and whoever you connect with, to keep talking through the scripture. Read it back for yourself. See what stands out to you. Go back and rewatch the sermon if you didn't already take notes. What stood out from the scripture? What song caught your heart? What liturgy kind of pulled you back down to grounded faith? And talk about it. Share that experience. Share it with us. Share it with your community. But yeah, we're so glad that you all have kind of joined us for this ride, for this, what we're calling the new normal. But man, there is no such thing. We're just we're in the fluid normal.
Can I tell you that we've done this for 13 weeks now?
That's a lot of weeks that we've been doing it. And there hasn't been a single week that looked like the one before it. So
it's true.
Here we are.
But you know who's constant? Jesus.
Boom. That's a wrap. That was it.
That's
done.
See you on
comment, subscribe.
See you
Fill
next
out the questionnaire. Let us know what you're thinking. We love you guys.
See you next week on another episode of The New Normal. Have a good week.